Welcome to the Sage Thought Leadership Podcast, building experiences that connect, remove friction, and deliver insights. Well, hi everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I'm Ed Kless, and with me today is Alex Castro. Alex is the co-founder and CEO of M Corp and is an aligner of execution to strategy for digital transformation and innovation. Best-selling author and the creator of the ReM Score, Alex believes that the gap between ideas, that is strategy, and execution is a persistent problem that is sidelining too many high-potential digital transformations and innovation growth opportunities. Welcome to the Sage Thought Leadership Podcast, Alex Castro.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Well, first off, Alex, why do you do what you do?
Well, having been in the professional services consulting space for 20 years, we see customers that have so much potential and so much opportunity in front of them that it really is just awful when we see people investing themselves into technology and or into innovation within the business, looking for that real springboard of growth, only to find that they're either hamstrung by resources or that opportunity watersheds away because execution didn't align or didn't match up to the potential that was in front of them.
So how is it that companies can better distribute their resources to be more forward-facing and deliver on that growth?
Yeah, for sure. Every time, what I would offer to the listener is consider that every time that you invest in tech, you're taking on debt. You're taking on what's called a technical debt. And that technical debt, I would offer to the listener to consider it's like a student loan, right? And so what happens if 80% of your disposable income as an individual is focused on servicing a student loan for the next 5-7 years? Think of the things that you're limited from, right? I can't buy a home, or I can't go on vacation, or I can't get that car I need to get to work, and all of those limiting factors. And those are the same things that impact small to medium businesses, is the fact that those investments, those deep investments in tech and buying software services, doing projects, with a 20% result of success by industry average in the sense of all of the studies that have happened in the last 25, 30 years, the needle doesn't move off that point. Half of technology efforts are either abandoned or fail outright, right? The amount of loss opportunity there is brutal. And so our focus as a company, we believe that your potential is our purpose, is that we really want to see more ideas coming to market and allowing companies to really stretch their legs through the results technology produces, not necessarily the ownership and continuous maintenance of technology. And so that's deeply what we focus on. So execution is a big part of that. And ReM Score, the tool that we developed to help really measure execution readiness, is that thing that removes the blind spots. So there's a lot of cascading things in there, but don't want to overwhelm the time.
Talk a little bit more about the phrase you just used, execution readiness. I find that to be fascinating. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So what we have found over the years, and the 20 years we've been in business, is that, we've done work globally, in industries like banking, finance, manufacturing, natural resources, public sector, and what we consistently find is that the ambition of a client doesn't always match their capacity to execute the idea. There is a significant gap in that. And that gap is what triggers those frustrating issues around schedule delays, cost increases, changes to the scope of an effort. And what we have found through a lot of research and development is that these cognitive biases that we use to make decisions around when are we ready, are our capabilities really there, tend to steer us incorrectly 70% of the time. And when you strip out that cognitive bias from your assessment of, okay, we've got this great opportunity, great idea, now we have to go to the doing, like the actual implementation of tech and the rollout of this transformational effort within the business, What tends to happen when you don't understand your readiness is all these blind spots come out, right? So the manager in charge of this wasn't a good leader. The vision is not clear. The business unit that you're depending on is at 110% capacity and has no time to participate in the effort. There isn't a clear understanding whether this is critical for the business. Does the business unit know how its rules work? Do they know their workflows, or do they simply act out the things that are established? So there's a lot of these factors, and we've assimilated 14 of them that help determine that readiness. And rather than that type of assessment that typically manually takes 3 weeks to 3 months and can cost you tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on the scale of what you want to do, we do, our tool does that in about 2 to 5 days using, machine learning models and swarm intelligence to really harvest that information from participants and creates a scored result that then allows you to understand, where are my blind spots? How do I correct them? And then by doing that, we find that customers actually accelerate implementation and can almost reduce their implementation time by half and cost by a third. So it has a direct net impact. So that's the nut.
And I think the studies that you were referring to, is it the Standish Group and their Project Chaos, right? Where they talk about nearly half. And what I seem to remember, and this may have been from a couple of years ago, where they said that the number one reason for failure that is reported is that leadership was not fully committed to the project or the engagement, which they say is underreported, because who do you think's filling out the dang survey most of the time? Yeah,
exactly. So, there's all those arguable points, and here's the net of it is that Standish obviously does some stuff and they do very good work. BCG, Deloitte, Accenture, McKinsey, Bain, everybody who in essence participates in the rollout of strategic initiatives has been measuring the effectiveness of execution strategy for the last 30 years. And there's, you can't go to a book website or some Audible thing without running into a book that talks about where is the gap in execution from strategy to execution. It's a known quantified problem, and the needle is not moving. Every year, somebody conducts a new study saying, oh, well, now that we're using tool X or process Y, it's going to get better. And here's the bottom line. 20% of projects actually fulfill their intended result.
On time, on budget. Yep.
On time, on budget, scope, all that kind of good stuff. 30% of projects deliver 60% of the initial intended value, but with an increase in time and scope. Half of all projects, again, are either abandoned or fail outright. And what I would offer to the listener right now, especially those smaller business and medium business leaders, if you were a bank and 50% of your loan portfolio defaulted, how would you be feeling right now? Because I'll tell you, during the financial crisis, we hit about 19, 20% default rate in the United States, and everybody thought we were falling off a cliff. And so in today's world of leader-driven decisions, data-driven decisions, are we really making the right decisions in timing and viability of some of these strategic initiatives that ultimately translate into some digital transformation work? And more importantly, is your business aligned to do that? And more often than not, 80% of 25 years of data tells us 80% of the time we are not. And that is just a shame, because I know there are people listening to this right now who've got some cracker ideas on how to move their business or change an industry. And it's the inability to realize that execution that is limiting, that gauntlet that is limiting their ability to realize that vision. And so going to your original question, why do I do what do I do? Because there's a lot of great ideas out there and that I would love to see come to life. And unfortunately, it's the misunderstanding of how prepared are we to do that work that is limiting that capacity. And it's sucking up funds, it's draining resources. But more importantly, there's a philosophy in the market that has taken hold that's this sort of fail fast model. And, things like that, demoralize workforces. And because we're built to win, we're taught to win from childhood. And if we're not seeing projects go through and things coming to fruition and seeing the fruit of our labor, people attrition out. And this is one of the core reasons I believe you see a lot of transience within retention in companies, is that they come in, they have a lot of ambition, they have a lot of energy, they want to be part of something bigger, and you labor, nothing, fail, or you're just having it canceled, pulled out from underneath you. A year and a half later, there's marginal movement and people tend to check out and then move on. So there's a lot of ripple in the context. Yeah.
Alex, we have an exit question that we ask all of our guests, and that is, who is a hero of yours and why are they a hero?
I have two heroes. I have Teddy Roosevelt and Hemingway. And, I think there's a lot of guys that have those same answers for some reason. But Teddy Roosevelt, gave a speech about the man in the arena. And, for the listener, I would offer you just to go take a peek at it, just Google it. It really tells a lot about the fact that, it's easy to sit in the grandstand and criticize, but when you're in the arena and you've got the sweat and the dirt and the sand and sometimes the blood on you, it's those are the only people who really have any right to criticize. And Hemingway, I think, because he represents to me somebody who lived life on his terms and really for whatever path he chose that path and he lived it to the most. So.
And lastly, Alex, how can somebody contact you?
I'm on LinkedIn. If you Google Alex Castro M Corp, it's pretty easy to find me, or www.the-mcorp.com. And it's pretty easy to get in touch with me. So it's not hard.
All right. Alex Castro, co-founder and CEO of M Corp. Thanks so much for being a guest on the Sage Thought Leadership Podcast.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Review and subscribe by searching your podcast player of choice for Sage Thought Leadership Podcast.